Hello! Welcome to another episode of OddHour. This episode is going to be a review episode of OddHour. We are going to review Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. We're doing this about a week before the remake drops because I wanted to get my thoughts out there about how I felt about the first game, what I think they can expand on in the second game. I know a lot of information is out already, but I still feel like it's worth sharing my opinion. So, let's get into it really quick. I grew up with this game. This game released the same month, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen a couple different release dates of when it came out in 96, but it came out the same year. For a while, I thought it came out on my birthday, but then I looked back and it wasn't the case. I have no idea when this game dropped, but regardless, I had it when I was a kid, and I loved it. I thought it was really fun and cute, and it was a Mario game, and how could you not? You know, how could you not like a Mario game in like the late 90s, early 2000s? So I played it, but I had no idea what I was doing. I was too young. I couldn't even beat Pokemon when I was like 4 or 5 or 6 years old. So I had no idea what I was doing. But I loved it. I liked playing it. And I remember getting to the final fight and not being able to beat Smithy. That is a pretty consistent theme that we're going to talk about. Getting to the final fight and not beating Smithy is a pretty common thing for me. Because I played another save file when I was a kid, got to Smithy, didn't beat it again, and then when it dropped on the Wii U Virtual Console, whenever that happened, or the Wii Virtual Console, was it Wii? Wii or Wii U? I don't remember exactly which one, but regardless, I played it, and I got to Smithy and didn't beat Smithy again. So, when the remake was announced, I decided I wanted to beat Smithy. So, I booted up the old Super Nintendo Classic, which is actually right next to me. If you're watching this, I'm holding the Super Nintendo Classic now because it's still set up from when I played it. And for those of you listening with only audio, I'm going to give you a little ASMR Super Nintendo Classic tapping. There you go. You're welcome. Busted it out, and I was like, okay. I'm at this point. This was this year. This was a few months ago. I'm OddHour. I'm fully engulfed in being OddHour now. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to play this, and I'm going to stream it every week until I beat it. It took me 7 streams. I had to miss a couple weeks, so I think it took me within less than 3 months. So, yeah, that sounds about right. I think it was in a 12-week span that we finally beat it. And that's what inspired me to do like a review for it too, because it's fresh in my mind. I know what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it. Nostalgia glasses are off. I played it fresh, and and that's what this is about. This is about how I feel about it. So, I think it's a really good game. I think it's a really, really good game. I am so happy that the remake got announced and it inspired. That day, the day the remake got announced, I was like, we're playing it. I've been putting it off for a while. I tried to play it a little bit earlier, maybe like 2 years ago or so. I was going to turn it into a YouTube series, but then the audio didn't work, and I was like, screw this, screw it. Let's just go for it. So I did. I'm very happy with how it came out. It's up on the YouTube channel. If you're unfamiliar, you want to go watch me play it, there's every episode as well as a little bit more condensed 12-hour version of it as opposed to the 14 or 15 hours that it took me to actually beat it. I'm really proud of that video. I very highly recommend it as something to watch for fun or to put on in the background while you do work and live life and all those things. It's a really good game. It's a good game. It holds up still. The references in it aren't like dated, like they're still very relevant. It doesn't feel outdated. Visually it's dated, but in the sense that it's just the graphics that were available back then. You know, it's a retro game. It's a retro game. You know when you're playing a retro game what to expect. And now retro includes like GameCube and things like that. We can debate about whether GameCube is retro or not, but realistically speaking, Super Nintendo is 100% retro. So, it's a retro game, and it holds up well. It took me 14, 15 hours to beat it. Not really dilly-dallying or doing a bunch of different side quests. I pretty much dove into the story and did only the story. And 15 hours is not bad. It's not bad. The question is, can 15 hours relate? How does that translate to a modern game that's being charged $60? We've seen a couple things, and we're going to get into what the remake has shown so far. But I want to finish the Super Nintendo version first. So, as I said, it's a great game. It is a really fun game. Introducing characters at a not super frustrating pace. Like, you get introduced to characters join your party pretty quickly, and it's very clear what their roles are. You get it, like, very early in the game, they show you, okay, if you get lost, you can come back to this thing and talk to this character. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, Mallow's grandpa, Frog Fuchsius. Whenever you get lost in the game, he'll tell you what to do next. It's a super helpful mechanic, and it's introduced very early for people who will get confused throughout the game, because it's an RPG. You're going to get lost more than once. I've played it almost my entire life, and I got lost when I was playing, and I had to go to Frog Fuchsius a handful of times, just because I didn't remember exactly what the next step is. So to have that mechanic early on introduced is good. It's good for new players, and it's good for old players like me. Mario's a very lovable protagonist. We know that. Geno's my favorite. Like, I love Geno. Mallow's a really fun character. Peach and Bowser round out the rest of the crew of, like, people that you can get in your party and things like that. It doesn't really slow down. There is a bit of a difficulty spike kind of early on, but I think that's just to teach you that you should be fighting side enemies. I think you're supposed to lose the first Croco fight. It's not scripted, but I think more often than not, even like a new player is going to lose the Croco fight because they just don't know exactly what to do. Because you're either the type of player who's going to fight every single enemy along the way, or you're going to avoid them because you don't want to fight. If you're avoiding them, then you're gonna lose the Croco fight early on, and you're gonna lose, and you're gonna have to grind anyway. You're gonna be like, okay, I'm not strong enough, let me go back. So I think putting that difficulty spike early on prepares you for what is to come, and it's a good way to go about it. Collecting the stars is fun. The bosses that you fight are unique and interesting. I mean, they all just take damage, but it's fun to, like, test how, like, which attacks work better and which attacks don't work better. It's a good game. It's a good game. Dialogue heavy, of course, as most RPGs are. But the story it's solid enough to hold. It's not like an empty story. Yeah, Mario goes to save Peach, and then all of a sudden the sword stabs him. No. Sword stabs Bowser's castle, and everybody gets shot in different directions. So it goes from trying to rescue Peach to, okay, we actually need to save the world. The stakes are a lot bigger than we anticipated. As soon as you meet Geno all of a sudden explains, like, hey, these stars that you found and this one that's right next to me, it's for, like, something super, super important. It's for something super important. I'll help you. I'll join your party and I'll help you. You need to help me restore the Star Road. And then from there, the game is like, okay, every action you take is then to get the star pieces back to repair the Star Road. So the story's solid enough, and you don't really get lost in it. Your objective is clear, and then it becomes clear again once it's introduced to you. It's like, okay, I have to go back and save Peach. To do that, you have to do this. Okay, well, now it's not actually saving Peach. You'll save Peach along the way, but it almost becomes a secondary thing. And then once you do save Peach, she just joins your party anyway. So it's not like a main thing to save Peach. It is in the beginning, but then it turns into something completely different, which is a good way to take people who are used to Mario games. People who have played Mario games are like, okay, the main objective is I have to save Princess Peach. You take that and you're like, okay, you were focusing on saving Peach. Now you get to focus on saving the world. It's much bigger stakes. It's more RPG, which is good. Very, very good, if we're being honest. The gameplay is fantastic. The way you fight enemies, the way you can approach enemies and avoid them in the overworld is fun. Fights aren't, like, long or taxing or exhausting. They're nicely even paced, in my opinion. Fleshing out your stats and your equipment and things like that is also super important and something that you should do when you play it. It's a cute game. It's a cute game. The timing for action commands is also very important. Teaching that timing early on is very important as well. It does all the RPG tropes very, very well, but it's just taking a Mario skin and putting it on an RPG. It's not... If you played an RPG, you know exactly what you're doing. But to take Mario and put it on is what made it fun. The worst thing about this game is that Luigi is nowhere to be found. Luigi only shows up at the end, during the end credits. They snuffed my boy. Fine, it's Super Mario RPG, not Super Mario Bros. RPG. Mario and Luigi, fantastic series. You should go play it if you haven't already. But you have to give credit to Super Mario RPG for giving birth to the Mario RPG franchise, right? Mario RPG translates to Paper Mario. Paper Mario eventually, one way or another, translates to Mario and Luigi. And then further down the line, you have things like Mario Rabbids, which isn't really an RPG, but it shows that a spin-off that's not a platformer can work and succeed. Super Mario RPG deserves a lot of credit. I'm going to say that again. Super Mario RPG deserves a lot of credit. It established things... It established spin-offs for Mario, unconventional spin-offs for Mario. And it's worked. Paper Mario wouldn't be here without it. Mario and Luigi wouldn't be here without it. It deserves a lot of praise. And why I'm so happy for the remake is that it's going to get... It looks like it's getting the remake it deserves. The graphics are updated to something new, but they're still faithful to the original, right? It would have been really, really fun to see like a Super Mario RPG remade to look a lot more like Final Fantasy VII, where Mario and the characters aren't really like chibi and short and things like that. They're like tall, like much more real world proportion. It would have been really, really funny to see that, but I think the remake is going a much more faithful way, which is a good thing. It's a good thing. Replaying it again after all these years was fantastic. Remembering things about it and being charmed by all the characters that show up for like a second, like Booster and the Sniffets and how they defend him, and then like the chefs over at Marymore and like all the different places you go to, and like seeing how the characters interact with each other, like how Bowser is worried for Peach, how Peach is like, okay, if you trust Bowser, Mario will trust Bowser. Like, it's a really, really good game. It's a really good game, and I'm very, very happy that it's getting a remake. If you haven't played it already, you should. I recommend it, but the remake's almost here. It's like a week away, so it doesn't really matter anymore. Pretty soon you're going to be able to pay $60 for the remake. Now, I think I made it pretty clear my feelings on the original Mario RPG Nintendo, right? I think my hope is that I do want to play the game again. Let me say this now. Playing it so soon to the remake's release did not like ruin my anticipation for the remake. And the reason for that is the remake looks like it's adding things. It's adding things and it's not subtracting things. It's adding things that do not dampen or lessen the experience of playing Mario RPG, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the remake now. The remake is adding perfect timing action commands to hurt every enemy during a fight, whereas before it was just to do like a stronger attack than the normal attack, which is good. That makes it a little bit easier. A Mario RPG is not inherently a difficult game, but if you can time things perfectly and that works to your advantage, why wouldn't you take advantage of that? That is adding something, that is not subtracting something. If you mess up the perfect timing, it's exactly the same as the original. But this added thing makes it a little bit better. Because while the fights are not hard, they're not difficult, RPG fights, and this is true for every RPG, whether you like it or not, sometimes they can be very long. So a solid way to shorten that is what they're doing in the remake by introducing perfectly timed action commands and by introducing something called the triple move. They just released an overview today, like the day that I'm recording this, so if you haven't watched it already, go to Nintendo's YouTube or Twitter or whatever and watch the English version of the overview. It explains how triple moves work, and I think that's genius. The more timed your attacks are, the more action commands you hit, the more you fill this gauge, which you can then use for a huge move that just smokes everybody. Like, it just does a ton of damage to everybody you're fighting. I think the way to balance that is to add more enemies to the fight, but I assume that would be later on in the game, because typically when you enter a fight, it can be anywhere from 1 to like, I feel like I've seen 6 or 7 enemies during a fight. So to have a triple move is really good for those longer fights that everybody just has a ton of health, or you can't quite figure out what somebody's weakness is, but you're landing things and you're filling the gauge more and more. It's a good way to balance it. It's a balancing thing as opposed to a subtraction. It's an addition that balances the game, if that makes sense. I don't know why that wouldn't make sense. It does not take away. The other thing they're adding to the game is some level of post-game. We don't know how far that's going to go. We already know about Culex. If you're unfamiliar with Culex, Culex is a secret boss that is a bit of a tedious process to go and fight. You fight them. That's the super secret final boss. Becomes a staple in a lot of Mario RPGs down the line, of a secret final boss separate from the actual final boss. So Culex has been teased, and I'm pretty sure we've seen screenshots showing Culex, so that's confirmed. But beyond that, right, we also know that after you beat the game, you are going to you have the option to go and fight bosses that have a more difficult setting. They are harder to fight, which is fun. That is a pretty big addition to beat the game and then say, okay, after you beat the game, you can do a thing. I don't know if that confirms like the idea of a post-game, like a post-game activity, a post-final boss is not in, like, is it going to be one of those things where you save right before you get to the final boss, as you typically do? You beat the final boss, credits roll, and on the original, you would have to reset, and once you reset, you can go back and do whatever. There is no after you beat the final boss, because once you beat the boss, the game ends, the story ends, all the enemies are gone, etc., etc. So the idea of, okay, well, you beat Smithy, you beat the final boss, now, once you start the game up again, there's a whole new world to like explore. You can go fight these bosses. You can see what has been fixed and things like that. There's a difference between, okay, you're at the final fight, now I'm here, I beat it, it like checks a little thing in the game system, now you can do the rest of these things. I don't think that's going to happen because of the explicit language saying once you beat the boss. I think you're going to beat the boss, you're going to beat Smithy, and you're going to have some level of post-game, including probably a guide to get Culex, because the way you get to Culex is actually a little bit difficult. It's something I had to look up, and I still need to record myself fighting Culex. Expect that at some point, hopefully soon. I think the right thing to do is to add okay, you beat the game, you can save, and start off with this save condition, right? Like, you go back to your house. You go back to Mario's pad. It used to be called the Pipe House. Now it's called the Mario House. I understand why they changed the Pipe House, but it doesn't make it any less funny. Like, I like the addition of rendered cutscenes. I think it's gonna bring these characters that we've known for all this time to life in a way that we didn't expect. It looks really cool. Like, they've already shown a bunch of different cutscenes, like the introduction to Mallow, the introduction to Geno. I bet is gonna be super, super cool. I can't wait to play the remake. And I double can't wait to play the remake because I played and finished the original. I cried. You can go look on YouTube right now. I cried when I finally beat Super Mario RPG for real. A game that I have loved my entire life but never beaten. The remake pushed me to beat it, and now I am prepared to go and play it again. So yeah, let's break it down really quick. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter pod hour, but I formatted it like a podcast as opposed to a review because I wanted you to hear my thought process. Because when I do these things, I talk. I talk through my entire thought process. There's not a whole lot. So overall, let's wrap things up in a nice bow. Very excited for the remake. How does Super Mario RPG score? I'm going to score it on a 1 to 10. I think the game is an 8.5 out of 10. I don't think it's a 9 because 9 is like near perfect or almost perfect. It's a shorter game. It is. 15 hours today is not the longest game in the world. And especially if you like and know what you're doing and you focus on the story and only the story, you could probably knock the game out in under 10 hours. The length of a game does not necessarily link to the quality, but I want to play more of the game so that the fact that it is so short compared to like a lot of other games is what dampens my experience with it. I like this game so much that it hurts the score, is what I'm trying to say. I don't like that it ends so soon. I think the characters are fantastic, like introducing Mallow and Geno and having them have fantastic backstories that also tie into the plot one way or another is fantastic while bringing in Peach and Bowser. It's a very smart way to take an RPG formula and slap a Mario skin on it. It's a very well-made game. It's very fun. Fights are not boring. They keep you on your toes. They keep you sharp. Abilities, special moves, and things like that. Managing your conditions, managing your armor and weapons. There's a lot that goes into this game, and it shows that they cared about it when they made it, and the remake is only going to double down on that. I'm sorry, I'm talking about the remake. I'm trying to talk about the original. 8.5 out of 10. The reason it's not an 8 is because, well, no, I think 8.5 out of 10. I don't need to justify why it's not an 8. It's an 8.5 out of 10. It's definitely a game I recommend. I assume the remake's going to bring it up to a 9 because it's going to take something great and make it better. I only have good expectations for this. If you have not played Super Mario RPG, you should get the remake or you should go out of your way. Excuse me. If you haven't played Super Mario RPG, you should get the remake or go out of your way to play the original. Boom. 8.5 out of 10. Fun game. You should go pick it up. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Pod Hour. If you like this, please let me know. Please let me know how you feel about Super Mario RPG, and if you're excited for the remake, I am all ears. Let's talk about it. Check out my stuff. Check me out on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. I'm there. You can find all my stuff at my link tree. It's www.linktr.ee/oddhour. Super easy link to remember. Check out my stuff. Let me know what you think about this episode, and let me know what you want to see more of in the future. Thank you for tuning in.